So, thinking about a career as a history lecturer, bringing history to life for a new generation, that's got to be rewarding, right?
Absolutely. It's an amazing field to be a part of.
We've got this stack of RoleCatcher pages on becoming a history lecturer, and honestly, some of this stuff is truly fascinating, so let's dive in. First things first, what does a history lecturer even do? I mean, obviously they teach, but is that it?
Well, yeah, teaching is a big part of it, for
Yeah.
sure, but it's so much more than that.
Okay, so what else is there?
Well, these RoleCatcher pages highlight things like research, writing. You might even work with research assistants.
Oh, wow, so you're not just teaching history, you're contributing to the field.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe even publishing your own books and articles.
That's incredible. Publishing your work, sharing your findings with the world, that's the dream. So it's like being a historian, a detective, uncovering clues from the past.
I like that. And speaking of uncovering things, one thing that these sources really emphasize is that the places where historians work, they're changing.
Oh, really? How
Uh,
so?
Well, universities are still the most common, obviously, but there's this growing need for historians in other places too.
Like where?
Think museums, archives, even government agencies are looking for historians.
Wow, I never really considered that. So it's not all about lecture halls and dusty libraries anymore.
Not at all.
Hmm.
These days, historians are needed to curate exhibits, analyze historical documents. The skills are really transferable to a lot of different areas.
That's actually really cool. Okay, that definitely broadens the horizons a bit. But what about the job market? Because these role catcher pages don't sugarcoat it, landing a university position is tough these days.
Yeah, it's no secret that those traditional tenure track positions are super competitive.
So, for someone who's really passionate about history and wants to make it their career, what are some ways to get a leg up in such a competitive field?
Well, that's where I think these alternative career paths we were just talking about come in. Getting experience outside of academia, like in a museum or an archive, that can actually make you stand out.
So, having options is key.
Exactly.
So, those alternative paths sound promising, especially in such a competitive field. But let's say, you're not afraid of a little competition. You're ready to dive headfirst into the world of history. What are some of those, like, must-have skills you'd need to thrive as a history lecturer?
You might think it's all about memorizing dates and names, right?
Yeah.
But these role catcher pages paint a different picture, surprisingly.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, knowing your stuff is important. Can't be clueless about history. But some of the top skills they highlight are actually reading comprehension, speaking, and writing.
Really? Wow, I wouldn't have guessed that those would be ranked higher than, say, knowing like everything about ancient Rome or something.
It's interesting, right? And I think it speaks to how history education is evolving. It's not just about possessing knowledge anymore. It's about knowing how to communicate it effectively.
Ah, so bringing history to life, making it relevant and interesting for different audiences.
Exactly. And that's where active learning and critical thinking, they play a huge role, which these sources really emphasize. It's about guiding students to develop their own interpretations of the past.
Oh, I see. So it's like you were saying earlier, it's about being more like a historian detective. You're not just accepting everything you read in a textbook as fact, but, digging deeper, asking questions, really coming to your own conclusions.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And those skills, they go way beyond the classroom, by the
Yeah.
way. Oh, yeah. They're valuable in any career that needs you to analyze, problem solve, communicate effectively.
So basically, someone who's interested in becoming a history lecturer is also, without realizing it, building up skills that are useful across a bunch of different fields.
100%. That's a great way to put it. And speaking of which, these RoleCatcher pages do a good job of laying out a clear path from, I want to be a history lecturer to actually making it happen, which I know you're interested in.
For sure, let's get practical. Where do aspiring historians even begin?
Well, the usual route is a formal education, starting with a bachelor's degree. They mention the obvious ones, history, archaeology, but there are some interesting additions too, like political science,
Yeah.
sociology.
So it's like they're saying, hey, history doesn't exist in isolation. Like, you need to understand the political systems, social structures, even the art and literature of the time to really, really get it.
Exactly. And that's where those other fields, the ones you might not think of right away, can give you an edge. Having a broader intellectual background helps you approach history from multiple perspectives, which is highly valued.
Well-roundedness is key. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But what about the hands-on stuff? I feel like reading about history is one thing, but bringing it to life, actually experiencing it, that's got to be a whole different thing, right?
Absolutely. And this is where these RoleCatcher pages, they really deliver because they give some super concrete, practical suggestions for getting experience beyond the classroom.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some things aspiring history lecturers can do to really make their application stand out? So give us the inside scoop. What kind of hands-on experience are we talking about here?
Well, one thing these RoleCatcher pages suggest is volunteering, like at a museum or historical site,
Yeah.
which, knowing you, probably sounds pretty appealing, right?
Oh, for sure. Getting hands-on with history, sign me up. But I guess even for someone who isn't, obsessed with history like me, it makes sense.
Totally. It's one thing to read about artifacts or historical events in a book, but to actually handle them, see how they're displayed, interact with the public, that's next level.
Yeah, I bet that gives you a whole new perspective. Plus, it shows potential employers you're serious, right? Like you're passionate enough about history to spend your free time on it.
Exactly. Shows initiative, passion, all that good stuff.
Okay, so volunteering, that's one. What else?
Well, these pages also talk about working as a research assistant, which they suggest can give you a real taste of what academic life is like.
Oh, like a behind-the-scenes peek into the world of research.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like an apprenticeship for historians. You're working directly with professors, maybe learning research methods, even contributing to publications.
Wow, so not just fetching coffee and making copies then.
Hopefully not. It's a chance to build your CV, make connections, really get your foot in the door.
Okay, that's awesome. And from the sounds of it, it'd be pretty hard to land a gig as a lecturer without that kind of experience.
Yeah, it definitely gives you an advantage in a competitive job market.
Makes sense. So we've got volunteering, research assistant positions, any other ways to get ahead?
These RoleCatcher pages also highlight internships, specifically with historical organizations or government agencies. They say it's about expanding your horizons, seeing how history plays out in different sectors.
Oh, I get it. So it's like history isn't just this thing that happened in the past, it's happening all around us, shaping our world today.
Precisely. And internships can help you see those connections, understand how historical knowledge is relevant in a practical sense.
So it's about connecting the dots between then and now,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Okay, this is great. So we've got volunteering, research assistantships, internships. It's like building this portfolio that shouts, I don't just love history, I live it.
I love that. That's a great way to put it. Because, yeah, it shows you're not just passively absorbing information, you're actively seeking ways to apply it, which is huge.
For sure. So let's fast forward a bit. You've put in the work, gained some awesome experience, and landed that dream history lecturer job. What does climbing the career ladder look like in academia?
Well, the traditional path, of course, is to become a senior lecturer, maybe take on more administrative roles, things like that. But like we talked about earlier, these role catcher pages, they really stress those alternative paths too.
Oh, right. Like working in museums, archives, all those possibilities we discussed. So it's not just a one-track path. There's room to explore and figure out what suits you best.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I love about this field. There's no one right way to do it. Plus, no matter what path you choose, continuous learning is super important.
What do you mean?
Well, whether it's going to conferences, doing specialized training, or just staying up to date on the latest research, being a historian is a lifelong pursuit. You're always learning, evolving your understanding.
It's like history itself never stops, right?
Yeah.
So as a historian, you have to keep pace, keep asking questions, keep uncovering new perspectives.
Exactly. Because the past might be fixed, but our understanding of it, that's always changing.
That's a really cool way to think about it. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of history lecturers, what's like the one big takeaway you hope our listeners grab onto?
That's a tough one. I think for me, it's that a career in history, it's about way more than just memorizing dates and names. It's about critical thinking, communicating your ideas effectively, and having this genuine passion for understanding the past.
It's about bringing history to life, getting other people excited about it, inspiring them to question, to challenge, to see the world in a whole new light, right?
Exactly. And who knows, maybe even inspire future generations of historians.
That's incredible. Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. If history is a story of us, what stories will you uncover and share with the world?